Hey, it's your boy Sisyphus. Welcome back to episode 40 of Let's Push That Boulder Up That Hill. We are here still trying to win a World Series with our Oakland A's, and we have gotten close at times. We have lost in the World Series, we've lost in the DS, and now this past season we have lost in the ALCS. And it's going to be sort of a tricky offseason that we're going to go through in this episode. We've got Tyler Pitzer and Daniel Cuvée hitting free agency. So, these are two of the guys who are sort of foundational pieces to get us to the point where we had, 3 consecutive playoff berths and we won a few playoff series, but we haven't been able to reach our ultimate goal, and now we are potentially saying goodbye to 2 players who have been instrumental in pushing us from a team that, had in terms of the franchise, like 12 losing seasons in a row into, a more consistent winning team. So it's going to be a tough thing to navigate. We're going to have to think about the long term and the short term. We're going to have to think about the budget, and it's just going to be a balancing act. Our score for the season was a 592. That is a very fine score. Foolish. Good job. Our new budget for the year is $160 million. I actually think that's a little bit lower than it was. I think we were at 166 last year, which was the highest we've seen. Back to 160, it should still be workable. In terms of our review of season goals from our owner, we ultimately met the team record goal, which was to just get to the playoffs, and that is the most important one. You can kind of tend to ignore these as long as you can consistently hit the team record goal. We haven't acquired a power hitter. I don't know if we will, but I'll try. Increase attendance. We've increased it some, but not enough to the threshold. Fan interest, same thing. He says fan interest is growing. Keep working to improve it. International amateur fines will be dependent on Juan Bustillos, most likely to fulfill that goal. And then long term, not too upset at a playoff team. However, he is still definitely hoping for more. Heading into arbitration, we don't have a lot of arbitration-eligible players. It's Jeff Grantland who is most likely due the biggest payday going into what would be his final year before free agency. Dave Sochi as well getting up there, and Alexis Cisneros. These are 3 guys we are going to consider trading. We've got some decisions to make for sure because we've got Cuvée, Pitzer, and also Nick Robertson set to hit free agency. It's going to be a question of, do we want to offer these guys extensions, or are we just going to do qualifying offers on these 2 in particular? We're losing Reed Detmers and Nelson Rada. Those guys were rentals. We do get Cam Collier for another year. So I think before I really go through with arbitration or anything like that, it's probably my best interest to explore some trades and see where the budget is at after that. Got our first of 3 trades I'm going to make right now coming up. The goal here is definitely to trade ARB-eligible players and get something in return for them instead of reaching the scenario we're at now with Pitzer and Cuvée, where we're really not going to get anything in return for them. We're either going to sign them at the market rate, or we will at the very least get a comp pick, but we're not going to be able to trade them for players. Jeff Grantland's going to go in this deal. This is a big one. He has been our closer the past couple years. He was definitely the ideal type of closer that we were looking for. You can see he was great for us, reliever of the year in 2033. But $10 million ARB estimate, 1 year till free agency, that's a lot of money. $10 million is a lot of money to pay a reliever when you're a team with an Oakland A's type budget. Johnny Nickelberry will also go in this deal. He was a bat we traded for, and I wouldn't mind keeping him around, but it just so happens that the New York Mets, who are trade partners with, did want him. Mike Quackenbush is going to be the main prize of this trade. He is a young starter, still set to make the league minimum next year. You can see his numbers are pretty good. He's thrown about 160 big league innings, ERA around 3. The repertoire I don't like. Fastball, changeup, splitter. I wish he had, a slider or a curveball. The changeup and the splitter are kind of overlappy type pitches to me. They kind of do similar things. He may struggle with some platoon splits because of that. But he does have a 65 grade fastball, which will help out. And he's got, 60 home run allowed, which is maybe the most important stat in the game. If you don't allow home runs, you can definitely be an effective starting pitcher, regardless of what happens elsewhere. So we'll trade for Quackenbush, a young starter. We'll also get Frank Lara and Jared Lucas simply as minor league depth. We will go ahead and make this trade. Got another trade coming your way. We're going to trade away Alexis Cisneros primarily in this trade. He's got a $6 million ARB estimate coming up. Let's see how many years till he would reach free agency. 2 years until free agency. And, I'll have fond memories of him, even though I had a career 4.88 ERA in an Oakland A's uniform. I thought he was key for us definitely in the playoffs. We relied on him at times as a bulk follower as a starter, and it was all kind of unexpected, but I think he really rose to the occasion. So despite having some unimpressive regular season stuff with us and, missing a year due to injury and the fact that he's fragile now because of said injury, I'll remember him fondly, and I'm certainly sad to see him go, and I think he could go on to, have a nice couple years here with the Miami Marlins. Pat Terrio going to go in this trade as well. Bummed to see him go, honestly, even though he had a pretty poor ERA, 6 ERA on the year. Also came through for us in the playoffs at times when he was needed, and he's someone I drafted in 2028, a 7th rounder. Sam Cooper, 2030 3rd rounder. That's what he looks like. Jake Izom, 2030 14th rounder. Some nice stuff here potentially for him, but not much else really. Bryce Durney was an international free agent signing for me back in 30. He has good defense. He has power. But he does not have, just the strikeouts and the walks are going to destroy him, basically. I think he's set up to fail, basically. So that's who we're trading away. And the return here, I think, is pretty good. We're going to get Min Hui Yu, who is also ARB eligible, but it's first year ARB eligible. He probably becomes our closer. He becomes sort of the replacement for Grantland. He's not as good as Grantland, but, Grantland cost $10 million. This costs $2.5 million. That's kind of how we're, shedding salary here. And then Albert Ramirez, a very intriguing second baseman, ranked as the 85th prospect according to the game. Had a nice cup of coffee with Miami with a 155 OPS plus. Some real power potential, but though he is 25, so I don't know if he has a chance to actually improve here. That might be a guy we get into the player development lab in an attempt to bring that power up to a 60. But hopefully he can play a good second base for us. And so between you and Ramirez, I'm pretty happy with this trade, even though I'm sad to see particularly Cisneros and Terrio go. And here's the third trade we are going to make. It's going to be the hardest goodbye. Dave Sochi. Goodbye. Dave Sochi had a wonderful year for us this year. 4.3 WAR, 128 OPS plus, 27 homers. Good defense in right field. Actually, really good defense in right field in general. You can see a plus 11 zone rating in terms of the run. So that's excellent from him. Trying to cut down on the ARB guys, $8.5 million due next year. This is what it's like to be the Moneyball ace sometimes. You got to have this roster churn. Chris McFarland also going to go in this deal. I like him. He hit perfectly fine for us. The defense was so weird, though, because, look at these ratings, and I just feel like that should be enough to have good fielding at second base. How about a negative 13 at second base? It's really weird. I couldn't make heads or tails of that all year. It really bothered me. Ernesto Lugardo is potential reliever depth, as is Arturo Carmona. I look at Carmona, I'm like, he's been used as a starter, but maybe he's better suited as a reliever. But these guys, a 2029 7th rounder and a 2032 12th rounder. So it's good, we get those guys in AAA, we get to trade them, but they don't become major leaguers, at least not for us. Juan Madrigal was an international free agent signing from 2028, so that was, 6 years ago in universe. But yeah, $210,000. He was never a big deal for us anyway. So who are we going to get in return? Well, the idea here is we're going to get Brendan Tendall, and hopefully he's going to be about as good as Sochi with, one more year of control and cheaper ARB estimate for now and younger, etc., etc. Didn't have the greatest 2034 with Pittsburgh, but, had been 2 or 3 win player, 2032, 2033. So hopefully, if my scouting is correct here, he looks like he should be very comparable, a similar enough player to Sochi. That is the goal here. Tracy Goss is definitely someone who could replace Cuvée. I don't think he's necessarily as good as Cuvée, but he'll be in that conversation alongside Damani Harrison when we're just talking about getting a bat in the lineup, right? We just to get a bat at sort of the first base DH area. He and Damani Harrison, he just basically gives us another option. And then Colt Watts is a reliever, and seems like he could be a decent one to me. Had a 3.10 ERA for Pittsburgh last year. Less than a year of service time. Tracy Goss, same thing. So again, these are young, players with flexibility and options. And yes, of course, I'll be sad to see Sochi go. I'll also be sad to see McFarland go, because I would not be surprised at all. If he just fixes the defense, he's going to be, a good player. But we just got a second baseman from the Miami Marlins, and this is part of the roster churn. We're going to go ahead and make this deal with Brendan Tendall, I think, sort of being the main prize. And as we say goodbye to Sochi, I do want to point out his career stats, at least for us. He played in 580 games. He hit 75 home runs. He had about an 800 OPS, 117 OPS plus, 11.8 WAR. So definitely one of the best players we've acquired in terms of the WAR that we've gotten back from them. So be sad to see Dave Sochi go, but we have to move forward. So we are going to go ahead and offer contracts to all these ARB eligible players. That includes new players we just traded for, like you and Tyndall. And because of that, you can see those service time right there. These are all first-year ARB eligible guys, and so the ARB estimates aren't that high. The amount we have to offer them to get them to sign is not that high, so that's not going to be as big of a constraint on the budget as, Sochi and Cisneros and Grantland were about to be in arbitration. Jeremy Shai, you can see, is actually Super 2 eligible, so he doesn't have 3 years of service time, but he's still ARB eligible because he's Super 2 eligible. Pending free agents, these are the ones we could get comp picks for. We're going to submit the qualifying offer on Cuvée. As you can see, if we were to go offer him an extension, that's what he wants. So that is to say he will not accept the qualifying offer because he wants a lot more than that. Robertson, we're not going to extend a qualifying offer to. He'll just become a free agent, and we'll have Detmers and Rada set to become free agents as well, albeit without any, compensation. Tyler Pitzer right here. Sort of the man of the hour. You can see that he has a pound sign next to his name. If you know what that means, you know what that means. If not, you'll see soon enough. Here's how we're going to set up the player development lab for now. This offseason, we're going to have DeBona, the newly traded for Albert Ramirez, and Juan Bustios work on generating bat speed that is akin to power. That's because they still have more room to grow in those areas. These are hard goals to get. We may only get 1 or 2 of these overall in the season. Damani Hairston, the 2-strike approach is definitely the most important thing for him. Struck out, 200 times in AAA. And then Mike Quackenbush, this is going to be actually the hardest one to get. I'd like to see if he can add another pitch to his arsenal because fastball, changeup, splitter, that is, the arsenal itself is the weakness. He's a great pitcher, but the arsenal could be better. Ben Cowan is someone who is also going to be in the development lab. He is a prospect of ours, a 2031 second rounder. I like the overall hitting look, but he will take 4 to 5 weeks to improve his defense at second base. The rest of these take 3 to 4 months, which is, the vast majority of the offseason. Here it is, folks. The biggest news of the offseason, Tyler Pitzer back with the Oakland A's. That is it. He does not hit free agency after all. 5 years, $125 million. No opt-out, no player option, no team option, nothing fancy. He does have a no-trade clause. He wanted that very badly, but 5 years, $25 million AAV for a total contract value of $125 million. He is fragile, but I will point out he hasn't missed a regular season start for us. You look at his career as an Oakland A, we just couldn't imagine a time without Tyler Pitzer, right? There's this entire save was just existed in a time before and after Tyler Pitzer. Tyler Pitzer came, he swooped down from the heavens, came over from St. Louis, and really saved his pitching staff and has been, the best pitcher we've acquired in this, and we just couldn't imagine a world without Tyler Pitzer. And I think one reason why we were able to get him is because he is on a slightly downward trajectory in terms of the numbers here. He's gone from a 2.91 ERA to 3.47 to 4 last year. But that being said, the ratings are right there. The injury proneness is fragile, but that is actually something we may try to work on. You can do that in the player development lab. But this is the big news of the offseason. Tyler Pitzer is back, and that shows our commitment to winning, and that shows that we can be committed to retaining our talent. We just really have to pick our spots given the budget. And with that news, we are going to put him into the player development lab to work on strength and conditioning, hoping to work on his injury proneness. It is award season. Here are your AL Gold Glove winners. Jeremy Okoro grabs one, the first of his career, a Gold Glove in left field. And then you see a couple old friends. Josh Van Noy wins at shortstop for the Rangers, and you look at those numbers and you say, yep, that looks about right to me. Connor Griffin as well didn't hit as well as he did in 2033 when he had that 5-WAR season, but still it's a 3-WAR season because he's such a good defender in center. So, current Oakland A's winning it, but also former Oakland A's in the American League. In the National League, it looks like this. We're seeing a lot of guys who have won before. One guy who I think is starting to show up in this save is Frank Arellano, nicknamed Chump, a third baseman for the Diamondbacks. And it's just like his defense plus that gap power, especially how that plays in that stadium, like 55 doubles, 15 triples last year, like that's pretty crazy. He's a monster player, back-to-back 5, 6-WAR seasons. Ben Gorel, this guy looks like he's kind of a monster shortstop for the Dodgers. He grabs his second Gold Glove. Ethan Salas, we've seen him win those before. He wins his third. Jeff Grantland not able to go back-to-back in terms of Reliever of the Year awards. He will settle for third place, while former A Chris Pereira finishes fourth. Keep in mind, Jeff Grantland, now a New York Met. It's Justin Martinez of the Yankees grabbing the award in the AL with 49 saves this year. In the National League, it is Devin Boylan, but it's very much a split. So Devin Boylan, 37 saves, 1.83 ERA for the Cubs, but also Juan Garza, the closer for the Pirates, and a couple Giants, Danny Hitchens and Jordan Leisure. This was the World Series winning team, so of course they had great relievers. And then, even Jinkichi Arata and Eric Harris also receiving first place votes. So it was spread out for sure. Here are your AL Silver Slugger winners. This guy, Ayasi, I don't know how to quite say this name, Hesters, is looking like a monster player as well, currently playing third base for the Tampa Bay Rays, but interestingly enough, claimed on waivers. So you see these numbers here. A player like that should have never been available on waivers, so kind of unfortunate, but the Rays benefit from the Mariners' CPU mistake. Steve Hill, this guy, looks a lot like another guy I once knew. Steve Hill looks like a very good player to me. 207 OPS plus in center, my goodness. Chris Greer gets one. That's his second Silver Slugger of his career. 201 hits, led the American League. He is just a monster hitter. I'm glad we have under an extension. And then Chester Girton, this guy just absolutely terrorized us in the ALCS. Here's what it looks like in the National League. Arellano grabs one, so that's a Silver Slugger and Gold Glove for him. And Jackson Merrill of the Giants with the same feat. James Wood grabs one in right field this time. I think he certainly won them in center before, but now he moves over to right field and wins one as well with a monstrous season. The AL Rookie of the Year is Jorge Duenas, who is a outfielder for the Minnesota Twins, but you can see also another outfielder, Johnny Miller of the Chicago White Sox, all very close. Even Jeff Welch got a first place vote. These guys all had pretty similar seasons overall, but Duenas ends up grabbing that award in the American League. In the National League, it is unanimous. It is Jesus Mateon, a right fielder for the Braves with a 4.4 WAR rookie season. Gregory Prawn, the universe for the Los Angeles Angels, is the AL Manager of the Year. They beat us in the ALCS and went on to the World Series, but they lost to the Giants. And speaking of the Giants, that is going to be Bud Smith, the National League Manager of the Year. The AL Cy Young Award winner is Jonathan Ciotti. That's the young right-hander we saw on the Yankees in the playoffs last year. And he wins the Triple Crown, 228 strikeouts, 2.48 ERA, 19 wins. That's a Triple Crown, 7 FWAR as well. So an obvious Cy Young Award winner. In the National League, it's going to be Ken Pepin, who captures 27 of a 30 possible first-place votes. Another great year for him. This guy is by far the best pitcher in Colorado Rockies history. You can see his career numbers. The guy's pacing to be a Hall of Famer. Absolute monster pitcher to be able to do this in Coors Field. For the second season in a row, the AL MVP is a young star on the Los Angeles Angels. It was Chester Girton last year. He settles for fourth, but this year it is Steve Hill, who is a center fielder who reminds me of that other center fielder for the Los Angeles Angels. Chris Greer finishes fifth with an excellent season. In the National League, the award went to Jake Kingston, who's been one of the best young players in this save, had a 9-WAR season, 300 average, 600 slug, 40 home runs, and great defense at the shortstop position. James Wood finished second, and Jackson Merrill finished third. As expected, Daniel Cuvée has turned down our qualifying offer. That means he'll become a free agent with a form of compensation to us attached to his free agency. And arbitration hearings are today, though we don't have any players going to arbitration. This is all in the lead up to the beginning of free agency. Not much to say with regards to the international free agents generated by the game this year. It's all mostly like role players and platoon guys. No one who's really going to be a star necessarily, at least not according to, our average and low scouting accuracy on these guys. In terms of the MLB free agents filing, the top position player without a doubt is James Wood. You can see the career of James Wood so far. Unbelievable already, worth a 60 WAR. He's basically already had a Hall of Fame career, although he demands a lot and his injury proneness is sadly wrecked at the age of 32, which we're seeing a lot of in this save. Turn up the save frequency. I think what happens is the frequency of the injuries isn't bad, but players just it becomes like a snowball effect, because then you get a few injuries and then your entire career you'll be injured because it just keeps snowballing, and it's kind of a sad thing to see. Top pitchers available: Grayson Rodriguez, 35 years old, and Reed Detmers, also 35 years old, but both very good. December 14th here, I have signed a free agent, and it's a name you'll recognize from the previous episode. This is Tyjon Stepter, who we saw as sort of an injury replacement for Steve Hill in that ALCS for the Angels, and he kind of brutalized us. He had a monster 3-run home run against us, and I was surprised to see that he had been waived, and he was on waivers and eventually cleared waivers, and I think elected free agency is what happened. I wanted to claim him when he was on waivers, but that felt maybe just ever so slightly unsporting. And to be honest with you, that was not my concern. The balance was not my concern. I just forgot to do it. So I've signed him to a minor league deal that turns into a major league deal for $1.8 million, provided that he makes the opening day roster, which he almost certainly will unless he suffers some sort of spring training injury. And that's a deal that will auto-repeat at $1.8 million until he reaches arbitration eligibility. He only has 52 days of service time, so I'm really happy with this. Our outfield depth was tested some last year. At points we had 2 outfielders injured at the same time, and we were starting some really goofy guys, and I would try to avoid that scenario this year. We probably need at least one more good minor league outfielder to be, somewhere on the 40-man, but this is a step in the right direction, pun intended, with Tyjon Stepter. December 23rd, the Rule 5 draft has passed. We did not make a selection. We did look a little bit, but we did not make a selection. We lost one player in this draft. That is Juan Carrera, who was a minor league signing and played for us in AA and AAA last season. Perfectly fine to see him go. Good power for an infielder, but doesn't really have the defensive chops to excel anywhere other than first base. January 10th, the Hall of Fame inductees in this year's class are Nolan Arenado and Joey Votto, both well-deserved. Adam Wainwright, Kenley Jansen, and Paul Goldschmidt are getting close to the 75% threshold. January 15th, the International Amateur Free Agent signing window has opened. These are the 10 players we have been looking at. We have been scouting them, inviting them to practice with us, and this is just one of those classes, man. This is just one of those classes where there's a player. And there's a player named Daniel Ramos, nicknamed Caveman, and he's just the best player. And you just have to have him. And when that happens, what you got to do is you got to say, all right, we're going to max out our budget on this guy and this guy only. So I'm just going to go ahead and offer him the max. I know it sounds crazy. I could get in a little bidding war, maybe sign him for a little less. Nope. For a player of this caliber, I'm just going to offer him the max. This is the last day before the preseason begins, so I do want to show you all where we're at financially as far as this team goes. I have dropped the development budget down. It was at $40.5 million 2 years ago. That is the absolute max it can go. 37 last year. Now it's down to 30. Honestly, as long as it's above 27, which is still 2x the baseline, I'm okay with it. Like, I've gotten it up to max at times, but this is not one of those years. We spent some money, right? We extended Tyler Pitzer, so some of that is going to come out of here. Scouting budget at $13 million. And if I go over to here, sorry, which tab am I looking for? Right here, yeah, our draft budget is going to be $10 million, so we have that potential to sign over slot. And, of course, we have that 5.7 allocated for hopefully signing Ramos, right? We have $10 million available to us. If you want to see the salary table, it's right here. We will have Collier coming off the books following the 2035 season, but some expensive salaries like Chris Baker has a $16 million team option. Chris Greer, his salary goes up to $14 million. So things start to get expensive. I mean, we have up to 165 potentially to 2037. That's probably not going to be the case because these half these ARB salaries won't actually happen for us one way or another. But yeah, we're in an interesting spot as far as the money goes. We want to remain competitive. We're spending some money, and we're trying to sort of keep the churn going on some guys. We don't want too many guys in arbitration. We want guys who we have either extended and are part of the core, or guys who are making league minimum and are optionable. So you've got your core of players, and then you've got a bunch of rotating pieces, and that's just kind of how it goes when you're running a team like the A's. We've also used the waiver wire to grab another outfielder. This is Doug Starr. He's similar to Stepter, both left-handed hitting outfielders that can play all 3 spots in the outfield. Doesn't have any options, hence, ending up on the waiver wire in the first place. And what we may do is try to open the season with him as the 4th outfielder on the roster, and then maybe open the season with Stepter in AAA and see if Stepter will accept being in AAA, provided he can't make it to the majors within that 30-day threshold. That would be an interesting little gambit there that could save us some money, or it could come back to bite us in the rear end. Maybe Stepter leaves and is really good for someone else. So we'll see. It'll come down to spring training most likely. Also, we do ink Daniel Ramos to the deal. That was our guy all along. I hope it was worth the $5.7 million, but he will join our international complex. January 26th, Daniel Cuvée is officially off of the Oakland A's. He will not be returning to us. The overall fan interest almost crashed with this news, but he has signed a deal with the New York Yankees. It is a 2-year deal with a $33 million AAV, then an opt-out, and then 2 more years at $31 million. He's a really good player. But, I mean, that's a lot. We'll see. We'll see what the big bad Yankees can do with him. Maybe they can get a little more consistency out of him. He had good years for us. He had not so good years for us. But as a result of this signing, we do receive a supplemental first-round pick. February 15th is the beginning of spring training. I do still have a trade banked to use potentially after spring training is over. It'll depend on if there's any sort of major injury, which we're certainly crossing our fingers and knocking on wood that doesn't happen. And you can see here the position players we've invited to spring training. I will probably add a couple like non-roster invitees as well. And then pitching-wise, here's who we've invited. But these are the guys on the 40-man at the moment. And yeah, we'll just have to see. There's not a lot of necessarily bubble players. I think the roster is pretty much set up. But we'll see if there are any surprises. And we're also still awaiting results from the player development lab that might help further inform our decision-making. We do have our player development results now. Speak of the Devil, and some pretty interesting results here. No improvement for Juan Bustillos in terms of generating bat speed. That's the second year in a row we tried that with him. Damani Harrison did not get the 2-strike improvement, which I think is absolutely going to be crucial for him. I mean, a 35 is close to unplayable. A 40 is, that's Cuvée, right? Like we dealt with Cuvée before, and if he gets up to 40, then he is pretty similar in profile to Cuvée. Albert Ramirez, this is interesting. We actually got a poor result for him trying to generate bat speed, and it seemed to implying that somehow we made him worse. And I have asked for another scouting report on him, but so far these ratings look like about what they were when I traded for him. But yeah, I mean, what's implied with the poor result here is that we've made him worse and that we've perhaps led to more strikeouts, although I think he was at 45 avoid Ks, if I recall correctly. I can't remember. So we're going to have to ask for a scouting report on him. No improvement on Quackenbush. We are trying to add another pitch. That was always going to be a lofty pie-in-the-sky type goal. But the big one, the one where we were actually successful, Steve DeBona, we were successfully able to generate bat speed for him. And you can see from the ratings right now, this guy's going to be a really good player. And he struck out 215 times in 142 games in AAA. He was just bad in AAA. He did not hit well in AAA, and because of that, I don't anticipate he will open, the season on the roster as our starting shortstop. But if he performs well at AAA early on, he will be up sooner rather than later. Because you look at this guy, I mean, the avoid Ks are the weakness, but he's an elite defensive shortstop. He's 80 grade there, and he's got 60 power, 60 I, 55 gap. So it's going to be power when he does make contact. So this is a guy to get excited about, the number 16 prospect in the game. And then a few days later, we had to wait a few days to add Pitzer to the player development lab because we had to get him extended, but no improvement for him in terms of the strength and conditioning program. He will still be listed as fragile with regards to his injury proneness, which is scary because, we just gave him a lot of money through his age 34 season. So fingers crossed. I do see he's also a 3-star, although, the ratings on the surface appear to be about the same. February 25th, we do have an injury. It's Pete Barker out with an elbow strain for 6 weeks. We weren't counting on him being in the rotation. He was really going to be the 6th starter / long relief guy coming into this year. And part of that is because he is fragile. And as he's fragile, he suffers so many injuries that are just a few weeks. This is a 6-week injury, 3-week injury here, 5-week injury here, 5-week injury here. It just kind of tends to happen to him. And this is all within the last year or so. So Pete Barker, that's kind of who he is. We're going to add him to the injured list with this news, but that does put a damper into our starting pitching depth. Well, I've gone ahead and whipped up my 4th and final trade of this offseason. It's a doozy for sure. We're going to be saying goodbye to Esau Holden, who was our 2023 first rounder in the compensation round. So this was the compensation pick for Jared Jones leaving that offseason. And I just don't like him. It's low intelligence. I drafted him because of the high ceiling, but it's low intelligence. It's 45 home run allowed potential. The stuff and the control potential are totally there. Like, they're freakishly good. The repertoire is freakishly good. I like that he has a screwball, but I mean, if it's a 45 home run allowed potential, there's only so much I can do with it. And the chances are with the low intelligence and him only being 19 and not only being a 25, it could get ugly. The home runs are always going to be a problem for him, and I just don't really like him that much as a prospect. Eric Ackerman, remember him? Got him on a minor league deal and got Jesus Guevara on a minor league deal. We're going to trade Ackerman here. I'm going to hold on to Guevara, though he'll play in AAA for us. And then it's just mostly minor league depth. The next best player is Jabari Asare, who is our 2033 5th rounder. Could be decent. I think could be decent, but probably not more than that. And then Sergio Alanis and Juan Frometa are mostly just minor league depth. Here's who we're going to get in return. It's a pretty big return. We're going to get Braden Jennings, who I think probably slots into our bullpen most likely. He's a lefty. David Luvano definitely enters the starting rotation conversations. Like with Barker injured, he's probably opening the season as the long reliever. Also a lefty. He's quite young at 24, soon to be 25, but some room to grow still. Good stuff. Working on the control for sure. Dave Marquardt, this is good minor league pitching depth. This is a guy you could start in an emergency. And then Juan Estrada is a 17-year-old Dominican first baseman. very contact-oriented with the 75 avoid case potential, high work ethic. I like this trade for us across the board, and I'm going to make it leading into opening day. We are moving forward here into opening day 2035, so now it's time for an opening day roster reveal. We will have Brendan Tyndall playing right field and leading off. He effectively replaces Dave Sochi in that role. Chris Greer's going to bat second in this iteration of the lineup, and then you'll see Cam Collier bat cleanup when it is against right-handed pitching, Jeremy Okoro versus left-handed pitching. We've got a couple of platoons here. It's going to be Juan Chinchilla at first base against right-handed pitching, and it'll be Tracy Goss at DH versus left-handed pitching with Greer moving over to first base. Tracy Goss had a great spring training, OPS over 1,000. He wins the job over Damani Hairston for now, but I'm sure Damani Hairston will get some playing time, get a run with the team at some point this year. You never know with injuries and all that. One guy who could be in trouble is the current second baseman, Albert Ramirez. We acquired him via trade from Miami in this episode, and he didn't get a good result from the player development lab, while Steve DeBona got an awesome result from the player development lab. And so what could very well happen is, DeBona comes up if he does well in AAA and takes over shortstop, and then this Liddell Hungo, Mike Benzavengo platoon simply moves over to second base, in which case Albert Ramirez would be both out of options and out of luck. So we'll just have to see about that. We'll, of course, have Jared Forrest playing catcher and batting ninth. Doug Starr also made this team, so Tyjon Stepter will start in AAA, and if he isn't in the big leagues within the first 30 days of the season, he can decide whether to opt out and become a free agent, or he can stick around in our AAA. I hope he certainly does the latter, but Doug Starr will get the first crack at being the fourth outfielder. And then Joe Mack, who I signed to a minor league deal. Devin Hicks, who is our normal backup catcher, had a really bad year offensively last year, which was a shame because he actually hit quite well in 2033. Joe Mack is going to fit in nicely. He has that captaincy personality class, and he bats left-handed. So what we're going to do is make sure that whenever he gets into games, it's going to be against right-handed pitching, or to make sure that Jared Forrest gets all the starts versus lefties. It's not really a platoon. Like, Jared Forrest is the primary catcher, but it's just making sure that we can use Joe Mack's left-handedness to our advantage whenever he is needed. And then here's how the pitching staff will stack up. It'll be Mike Drake taking over as the opening day starter / de facto ace with Pitzer. Despite having the big contract, he's going to be our number 2 pitcher. Jeremy Shia is there at number 3. Had an excellent year for us in 2034 in his first year as an Oakland A. Mike Quackenbush will hopefully do the same in his first year as an Oakland A. Coming over from the New York Mets, he has some similarities to Shia, both young left-handers. And then Robbie Spector deserves a run in the rotation. We wanted to get him in the rotation. I want to see what he can do coming out of the 5 spot. Bullpen will set up like this. Yu becomes the new closer with the departure of Jeff Grantland. Colt Watts becomes the 8th inning stopper akin to a setup man, and Danny Baudanza retains his stopper role. He becomes the 7th inning guy. In middle relief, we'll have Salcedo, Southard, Jamie Bennett, and the newly acquired Braden Jennings, as well as David Luvano in long relief. These guys just came over from Cleveland. Pete Barker on the injured list to start the year could definitely factor into the bullpen, or, in the starting pitching depth as well. If there's anything you can look at here that's a clear weakness, we're just super left-handed, and that wasn't really my intention. I mean, there were times where we were super right-handed, and right now we're super left-handed. So we've got 3 out of 5 starters in the rotation left-handed, and then almost all the relievers. We only have 4 righties in this entire pitching staff. It's Pitzer, Spector, Watts, and Salcedo. We'll see if that comes to bite us in the rear end, but that is something that could also be alleviated at the trade deadline. I'm not too worried about it for right now. Overall, I'm pretty happy with this offseason and this roster, and I think we'll definitely be competitive for a playoff spot once again. Extending Tyler Pitzer was definitely key in that. That sort of extends our competitive window in a way. So I'm excited to see where this team goes in 2035, starting in the next episode.